Every now and then, an actor wakes up and decides to act. Not self-promote, not pose, not stand in front of an explosion in slow motion, but actually perform. It's rare, like watching a golden retriever eat your homework. But when it happens, it's glorious. Because for a brief, shining moment, the cinematic universe forgets that these people have been phoning it in for the last decade, and we get to witness something miraculous. Competence. Meh. More like just doing your job that you get paid millions of dollars for. This isn't about the Meryl Streeps or Daniel Day-Lewises of the world. This is about the ones who built their careers on flexing, staring attractively into the distance, mumbling, or just generally existing in front of a camera until the credits roll. All of them have that one role, that weirdly good performance that makes you sit up and go, wait, are they actually acting right now? Sometimes it's a matter of the right director. Sometimes the script is too good to fumble. And sometimes it's purely by accident, like lightning striking a muscle-bound tree. But whatever it is, it's worth studying. Because these are the moments where the gods of mediocrity touched the divine and forgot for one fleeting film that they didn't have range. Before he became the world's highest-paid motivational speaker, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson actually gave us a taste of a version of him that wasn't allergic to risk or self-awareness. The Rundown was that miracle. This was 2003, pre-franchise uniform, back when The Rock was still figuring out how to act without arching his eyebrow every 5 minutes. And to everyone's shock, he was kind of good. He plays Beck, a bounty hunter with a code, the kind of guy who could beat you half to death but still apologize afterward. This is your typical retired crafty veteran gets called back for one last ride kind of story. And what do you know? The Rock is actually acting like a human being instead of a meme in progress. There's this charm in The Rundown that vanished somewhere between Fast 5 and his third cheat day. It's like watching little Timmy do a cartwheel for the first time, not knowing he'll do it over and over again. And now he's 35 and can't get a job. He's still physically ridiculous, but he's not yet the self-parody he'd later become. He gets to be frustrated, awkward, even a little scared. Emotions that don't typically survive under contractual obligations that count the amount of punches someone can land on you. It's an adventure movie that lets him take those punches, and in doing so, you can almost see a career that could have gone another way. A version of The Rock that embraced being the ex-wrestler who can act, not the actor pretending to be an ex-wrestler who can't. The Rundown showed that he had timing, humility, and some sense of balance between physicality and personality. And then, of course, Hollywood saw that and said, cool, now do the same thing forever, but with worse scripts and tighter shirts. Fast forward 13 years, and The Rock has become the cinematic equivalent of protein powder, everywhere, vaguely effective, and impossible to digest in large doses without shitting your pants. But central intelligence gets him right again, mainly because it lets him be weird, which he probably is at that level of wealth. He plays Bob Stone, a high school outcast turned CIA operative with the body of a tank, and the emotional vulnerability of a golden retriever. This was the rare moment where The Rock wasn't trying to be cool. He was trying to be funny. And it worked because the movie understood the joke. The Rock is built like a demigod, but acts like a Disney Channel protagonist who's just happy to be here. And then you have Kevin Hart, who, for once, isn't sprinting around the screen like a caffeine overdose personified. This was when you still thought he just preferred to be funny instead of only being capable of doing that. The chemistry between them works because they swap archetypes. The Rock plays the insecure goofball while Hart plays the straight man, and that inversion makes the whole movie click, at least to me. There's something genuinely sweet about watching The Rock overcommit to this delusional optimism, all while Kevin Hart's character keeps looking at him like, how is this my life right now? For maybe the first and last time, both of them remembered that comedy is about rhythm, not volume. Central intelligence stands out in both their filmographies because they actually listen to each other, like they're acting together instead of at the camera. The Rock gets to show off vulnerability without sacrificing the charisma, and Kevin Hart gets to be subtle for once in his career. It's funny, it's self-aware, and it proves that maybe, just maybe, these two could have been something special if they hadn't immediately cashed that chemistry in for 5 more buddy action reboots and a jungle full of green screen. Then comes the upside. The one time Kevin Hart looked at a dramatic role and said, yeah, I can do that. And to everyone's surprise, he actually could. Based on a true story, the movie casts Hart opposite Bryan Cranston as an ex-con who becomes caretaker to a wealthy quadriplegic man. Sounds like Oscar bait, right? But here's the twist. Kevin Hart doesn't ruin it with his comedy that we left behind in 2009. In fact, he's phenomenal. There's an ease to his performance that you never get in his comedies. His voice softens, his timing slows down. You can actually feel what he's saying instead of bracing yourself for the next punchline. What's shocking is how naturally he fits into dramatic pacing. You keep waiting for him to slip into that lil man, big energy shtick, but he never does. He just lets the story breathe. There's a scene near the midpoint where he's talking to Cranston's character about purpose. And for a moment, you completely forget you're watching Kevin Hart. It's that rare glimpse of depth you always hoped he had buried somewhere under all that cardio. You see, now I don't feel bad for making all these videos on them because I've seen what they're capable of. The upside doesn't reinvent him, but it does expose something honest, a kind of emotional discipline he rarely gets credit for. Of course, that lasted about one movie before he went back to screaming at Dwayne Johnson for 2 hours because he realized the movies get 9 figures anyway. But hey, for one brief shining moment, Kevin Hart had range. Jack Black in Bernie is one of those rare casting miracles where everything that usually makes an actor unbearable suddenly becomes the exact ingredient that makes the role work. You can feel Linklater understood Jack's natural excess, the need to charm, the inability to be still, the way he treats dialogue like a trampoline, and weaponized it. Bernie Tiede is a man so sweet and performatively kind that it borders on eerie, and Jack plays into that paradox with this eerie gentleness that feels like he's trapped between sincerity and showmanship. He sings hymns, he comforts widows, he plans funerals like Broadway productions, but there's always something twitching underneath, a guilt, a need to be adored, the shadow of someone who can't stop performing even when no one's watching. It's almost chilling how his natural comedic rhythms make Bernie's people-pleasing believable. He's not playing serious, he's just channeling his comedy into control, like a clown who's suddenly afraid of laughter and realizes some people find him scary. And you can see the flicker of exhaustion in his face, that tight smile that says, I need this attention to survive. That's acting. That's real range. And then you've got King Kong, where he morphs into pure selfish ambition. Carl Denham is this manic old Hollywood showman who sees the world as an opportunity to make content, basically an influencer before ring lights, and Jack Black embodies that desperation with an intensity that's at times uncomfortable to watch. He plays it straight, but there's always this manic gleam in his eyes that feels like it could flip into a punchline at any moment. When he's not shouting about the eighth wonder of the world, he's quietly watching the chaos he caused, calculating how to turn tragedy into spectacle. It's the most self-aware he's ever been as a performer because you can see him wrestling with his own persona. In that moment, Jack Black the comedian disappears, and what's left is a man who will risk everything for the sake of being remembered. It's haunting, almost tragic, and maybe the closest he's ever come to playing himself without realizing it. I really had to scratch my head to find something nice to say about Gal's performances. I really did. I guess by process of elimination, it's Zack Snyder's Justice League, where you're too distracted to see her deadpan delivery because you hear yodeling every time she's on screen. Gal Gadot's performance in Zack Snyder's Justice League is the definition of being carried by tone and cinematography. But to her credit, she gets Snyder's tone better than anyone else in the movie. She's not playing a person, she's playing a symbol, and the movie treats her like a moving fresco. Every gesture is deliberate, every glance designed for a slow-motion shot, of which there are many in this terrible movie, rather than a feeling. I probably upset some Snyder cultists by saying it's a bad movie, but that's alright. We'll all have to wait a few months for their 3-hour response video to come out. Anyways, this look actually works for her. Gadot's limited emotional range turns into this unshakable calm that feels almost mythic, like she's half aware she's too beautiful to emote. When she moves, it's graceful in that old-school silent-era sense. She's a projection of an idea. The divine warrior who doesn't need to convince you she's powerful because the camera believes it. The delivery is still stiff, the line readings are flatter than the Amazonian plains, but in Snyder's world of slow-motion gods, that stiffness becomes part of the aesthetic. It's all about looking eternal, and that's exactly what Gal Gadot can do. Megan Fox Until Death feels like she finally understood the kind of movie she belongs in, one that doesn't ask her to be human, but to react like someone desperately trying to appear human. And that's a compliment. Well, not really. In this movie, her flatness works well. The detached, slightly glazed performance that made her unbearable in Transformers, unless you weren't watching for her acting chops, becomes a kind of eerie survival mechanism. She plays a woman handcuffed to her dead husband in a cabin, forced to outthink two intruders while dragging a corpse around the snow, and she actually sells it. The stillness that used to feel like laziness now feels like composure. She doesn't overact the fear or try to cry her way into empathy. She just stays alive. And you believe she could. The camera lingers on her face. And for once, her beauty feels like a burden. She's bruised, exhausted, stripped of glamour, and you can tell she's finally working with the genre instead of against it. It's not range in the traditional sense, but it's awareness. She knows how she's perceived and uses that to her advantage, if you know what I'm saying. Watching Till Death almost feels like watching a career self-correct. She probably realized she'll never win an Oscar unless it's from Brazzers, so she might as well make being trapped in a snowstorm look iconic. If Till Death was Megan Fox learning how to survive, Jennifer's Body was her learning how to perform. It's wild that a movie once written off as a disaster is now regarded as a cult masterpiece. Because Fox was doing the assignment years before people realized what the assignment was. She plays Jennifer Check like a walking manifestation of the male gaze, self-aware, weaponized, and a little tragic underneath the smirk. The genius is in how she doesn't overplay the monster. She doesn't try to humanize the demon or wink at the camera, she just is. Her line delivery feels like it's been filtered through 6 layers of confidence and exhaustion, as if she's sick of being adored but still addicted to it. It's also one of the few roles where Fox gets to be funny on her own terms, not just eye candy for someone else's punchlines. She managed to make possession feel like empowerment and horror feel like heartbreak. Watching Jennifer's Body now feels like a retroactive apology from everyone who didn't take her seriously, because for once, she got to play the caricature and control it at the same time. Before Mark Wahlberg became the patron saint of Boston Gym Bros, and the face of that one guy who definitely calls it the industry he actually acted, Three Kings might be the only film where he's not playing himself with varying levels of volume. As Troy Barlow, Wahlberg captures something he rarely has since: innocence. He's not the loudest guy in the room or the one cracking tough guy one-liners. He's just a kid who thought the Gulf War would be exciting and realizes it's all senseless chaos. His performance is jittery, but genuine. The kind of emotional palette he later buried under years of macho self-parody. There's a scene where he's captured and tortured, and instead of the stoic silence most action stars default to, he's panicked, pleading, damn terrified. It's disarming to watch because Wahlberg, the guy who'd later beat up CGI aliens and robots with nonchalance, looks completely breakable. You almost wish this version of him stuck around longer. But, like all tragic cases of self-awareness gone wrong, Three Kings was the exception that proved the rule. Once he realized audiences preferred the swagger and less clothing on his upper body, he traded complexity for confidence. And honestly, we lost something. The actor disappeared, but the meme was born. The fighter feels like the last time Mark Wahlberg remembered what acting actually is. As Mickey Ward, he dials it all the way down and becomes something he rarely is: vulnerable. He's not trying to prove he's the toughest guy in the room. He's just a guy in the room trying to survive the people around him and make an honest career in boxing. Christian Bale may have won the Oscar for his self-destructive brother, Dickie Eklund, but Wahlberg holds his own. I think it's to do with the chemistry they've got. The way he looks at Dickie with endearment, seeing his brother fight this addiction his whole life, you can see the inner conflict boiling in his eyes. It's weirdly touching to see him act without ego, like the movie forgot to tell him he was Mark Wahlberg. Every jab looks like it costs him something. By the time he gets his moment in the ring, it's a sigh of relief. He stops playing the American dream and starts embodying the exhaustion that comes with chasing it. Maybe Bale just made him act better by proxy, probably threatened him to step his game up before he gains 30 pounds of muscle and take his gig. All these actors have been memed to death for being one-dimensional, and rightfully so. But when the material lines up perfectly with who they actually are, or at least who we think they are, something almost magical happens. Jack Black's manic warmth becomes soulfulness in Bernie. The Rock's charm finally fits into a role that's supposed to be larger than life. Megan Fox's detachment turns into grit. Even Gal Gadot, goddess of the blank stare, finds a kind of divine stillness in Snyder's slow-motion religion. Range isn't always about transformation, even though you hear me talk about it all day long. Sometimes it's about being unshakably yourself in a movie that finally understands you. And I'll be honest, I don't usually like doing these videos on bad actors. There's nothing fun about sitting through 3 romantic dramas, waiting for a spark that never comes, or trying to convince yourself that pain and gain counts as nuance. But I had to make an exception for this lineup. These aren't actors trying to prove they can do more. These are actors who accidentally stumbled into their one masterpiece and walked away like it was just another paycheck. So maybe that's the real lesson here. It's not that they forgot they don't have range. It's that for one fleeting moment, they didn't need it.